Hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Something in my eye. Welcome back if you have. So I'm just going to roll right into it. I have so much I want to share always, and it's hard to narrow it down sometimes in these videos. I had a whole whiteboard that I drew up the other day thinking, oh, I'm going to talk a little bit about 3D, 4D, and 5D, and I might get to that in just a minute. But I want to start off just by talking about our reality structure. And there's a lot that is shifting right now. We're going through a huge, massive upgrade, essentially. This is happening on such a grand scale that it is, again, for myself, from a linear perspective, difficult to explain. So I just want to talk a little bit and share that from a higher perspective, from a higher dimensional perspective, I'm just going to go there. It's already happened. This anchoring of the frequencies of the higher echelons, the higher lights, the higher rays, the fifth dimensional harmonics, and more is already here. What's happening and what we're seeing is a collapse of everything that isn't there, because it cannot exist within the framework that we are creating as a collective of star seeds and light workers and way showers. It's that simple. Of course, I'm going to talk a little bit about 3D in a minute too, because sometimes I know that it doesn't feel that simple. So I'm starting high vibe, and then I'm going to go into some other layers. Bottom line is that we, as star seeds and light workers and way showers, have already anchored all this. So we're there. We're in it. We're bringing it. It's been brought. However, as that happens, it causes cracks. It causes shifts. It's almost like the light has seeped in, and this old facade that was held together by what I hear are strangleholds, cords of in accordance, old agreements, old contracts that were meant to bind. I keep being shown that they're ancient, and so they're cracked, they're falling apart, and they cannot hold. They're trying to put pieces together of something that is no longer able to stabilize. So I'm being shown like fascia, and if you know how fascia works, the more that it's hydrated, the faster the energies can connect, the more flexible things are. If you know how earthquake structures are built, they are built to hold the weight and stabilize and move. If they're too rigid, they crack and they fall apart. And that's essentially what my guides are showing me, is that it's been, all that is like old papyrus paper. It had old ink and old stuff written on it, and it's crumbling. It cannot hold. And so it's not even able to be saved. So these old energies, it's a facade. And I keep getting shown like holographic presentations that are continually being pumped into our awareness to try to trick us into thinking that it is holding when it isn't. So that's the higher, well, I kind of went a little 4D, 3D there. But from a higher perspective, we are being invited to stay in our heart, to stay in alignment with what we came here to do, and to do it with grace. There are those of us that came here to expose what is not in alignment, and there are those of us that came here to hold the frequency of what is, and there are those of us that came here to do both. The question my guides keep asking are, what are we feeding into? How are we feeding into it? What are we feeding from? What are we nourishing ourselves with? And what are we offering in return as nourishment? What that means it means a lot of things. But essentially what it means is, if we are continuing to feed ourselves with empty, cracked, unhydrated, non-stable realities, It's like it's empty. All of this stuff is falling apart. So while we may feel guided to dive into that and find out what it is that's falling apart, and that can be very important for many of us to assist in integrating and recognizing and knowing, we are also being invited to do it from a space of grace, a space of hold the field. And that can be very challenging when we are learning truths about things that are not true. And I know that sounds very confusing, but the biggest message is, what is the truth? There's always a truth behind a truth behind a truth. But the fact of it is things are falling apart that are not cohesive. And we are the cohesiveness. We are the glue. But if we're falling apart and we're not able to stabilize our own field, then we cannot provide the stability and the glue for what it is we came here to build, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of speaking across the board here. Then I'll get into a little bit more of the 3D, 4D, the lower realities that are collapsing in just a minute. So if we are being invited to be responsible and take responsibility for what we are taking action in. So while it is important sometimes to inform other people about what's going on in these lower echelons, because it needs to be made aware to a certain extent, and I'm being guided to talk about why. We are aware and we are awake. Our brothers and sisters are aware and they are awake. If we are then exposing things that are already in the process of being exposed, and that takes us and distracts us. By the way, I'm saying this with love because some people can do this. Some people can balance it out and do it with grace and do it with non-judgment and do it with this non-perpetuation of hate. We are not perpetuating that energy because energy is energy and it is a feeding mechanism. So in other words, if we're feeding hate into our bodies and we're feeding hate back out, but we think we're doing the right thing and we're not coming from our hearts, energy is energy. So we really are being invited to step out of ego, step out of the need to be right or wrong, step out of the need to be validated. That's challenging. I still struggle with that at times because there is this, for me, it's no longer a need to be validated. It feels good when somebody else can say, yeah, you're right. It feels good. Then you feel like, okay, I'm not crazy. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit as well. However, there's a line of the need to be feeling like you're not crazy and then crossing over that line and wanting to be told, good job, you're right, I was wrong, etc., etc. Because there is that discernment that we're being invited to use. Am I in ego? Am I in judgment? Am I in blame? Because that holds a certain toxicity in that energy. Or am I able to integrate all of those emotions? So I want to back up and say it's not wrong to feel those, right? I say all of this with non-judgment as well, because I've been there. I go through it. I experience these feelings. We're all human having a human experience. It's not to ignore it and pretend like things that I'm learning about don't upset me or don't create a feeling within me. But it is finding that space of integrating and allowing those emotions to not cloud my own creation, my own creativity, and my own clarity. Because if I'm not clear on something and I feel that I need to get clear on it, I will dive in. But if I'm not clear on something, I'm not going to go and share it with everybody until I have clarity on it. I have done that before. And I've been lucky. I've been fortunate at times that information has been correct. But I have shared information in the past that I wasn't really clear on, and it wasn't 100%. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't necessarily in the highest alignment. And that's part of my own process that I've learned over the past year. And I'm sharing that with you guys because we're all going through that on our own level. So here's some validation. You're not crazy. Some validation is we are experiencing upgrades, downloads, and activations at the same time from these higher frequencies. We're feeling it in our bodies. We're feeling it. We're experiencing anomalies. There is no new normal. There is only change. There is only shift. There is only allowing and unfolding and exploring and remembering more and recognition. That's it. Not that's it, that's the all end all know all be all, but there is no more comfort zone. We've been there, we've done that, it's been done, and that comfort zone was taken and we'll say warped, and I hear time warped into complacency. And then that complacency made us feel safe. And then that safety then was warped into a control game. That is old energy. And that old energy is in the process of being recognized so that we don't continue to be complacent about it. So I'm mishing here. I'm going in and out of a higher fifth dimensional perspective, a lower density perspective, so on and so forth. I'm trying to meld them, mix the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the 5 and the 6 and the 7 all together, because we are multi-dimensional beings having an experience in a human body. So how is that normal? What is normal? We're being invited to stop using old words that don't fit who we are anymore. We're being invited to stop playing in the same game, in the same sandbox, creating the same creations that cannot fit, that are crackling and falling apart with the frequencies that we're in now. We've moved up in scale, and we're being invited to step up and fill that space with a larger perspective, understanding, expression, heart, feeling, expansiveness. So I want to go back to saying that this can feel like we're crazy at times because it does not fit the old expectations. It doesn't fit into our old conceptualization, because as we start to embody the multidimensionality that we are, and we start to operate from flow, allowing, acceptance, yet also having sovereignty in that acceptance and not allowing the old constructs and the old frameworks to dictate who and what is normal, who and what we are, who and what words we're allowed to use in our creations, thinking that we're creating when we're really stuck in a time warp, time loop. And so many of you guys out there know what I'm referring to. And for those of you that don't, I'll kind of share that at the end as a little bit of truth to the 3D. So I want to start with this higher frequency though, because as we embody and we recognize that we are multidimensional beings, we're also being invited to recognize that we need to embody and anchor the frequencies of love and light here now. Yes, everything is happening now. Old timelines are collapsing. Future timelines that we're trying to be created or embedded or falsified into creation, because if we focus on something enough, it becomes a reality. So a lot of the stuff that's being projected at us to try to harness or create certain thoughts, focuses, and energies are perpetuated in order to try to get us to focus our energy into that. Because then that does create a more cohesiveness to these old structures that are really losing their hold. But it's only temporary, because the awakening has happened at such a large scale that it only prolongs what is already happening. And I know I'm talking a little bit in code here, but bear with me because I will get to the end and talk about some really basic stuff to help explain some of this. So bottom line is, we're going through some changes. And this is only going to continue to expand. Think of it as growing pain. Sometimes not feeling comfortable and being complacent can seem more, or breaking out of complacency, can seem more uncomfortable than being complacent. But I keep getting this picture of like a person who is being spoon-fed. So I'm seeing like a person watching TV, all zombied out, believing into what they're seeing and listening to, eating what they're being told to eat, falling in that energy. And then it turns into like this feeding tube. It's like the Matrix, basically. And more triggers are happening in people's DNA naturally, because that's what we are naturally made. That's how we're made. That's how we're created, or that's how we've created ourselves. However you want to look at it from a multidimensional perspective. Our DNA was not made to be stagnant. It was made to shift and involve and evolve and all of that, as was Mother Earth. So what's been holding Mother Earth back, she is not allowing that anymore, because she's ready to grow. She's done she's done with all of that. And we, along with her, are done with all of that. There are some that don't remember that. They're not quite there yet. They are activating at a very low scale. And what happens when it cracks and that light comes pouring in and all of the shadow is revealed, however that may happen, whenever that may happen, sooner than later, those people that are completely asleep, plugged into that TV, eating what they're told to eat, what's going to happen? We have to hold that field. We're invited to hold that space. We know that's what's going on. And the more light we hold, the more that stuff that's going on all around us is unable to attach or unable to unfold into a timeline that none of us have agreed to. We do not agree to that timeline of control. It's done. We do not consent. We are awake. And by us being here, that holds our frequency of stability, compassion, love, and creating from that energy. So now I'm going to go a little into, I feel like I didn't cover a few things. So validation. Yes, we're going to have physical discomfort. I could do a whole video just on ascension symptoms, but it's been done. Google or don't Google, whatever you want to do. Look up ascension symptoms. Use DuckDuckGo if you feel like that's better, that's more for you. Look it up. They're all over the place. Everybody's different. Each and all of our technology holds information from our DNA, and even though we come from source or we are one in that essence, we are a unique individual expression so that we can more fully express, explore, evolve, involve, and become in a more advanced, more open experience. Okay? So we're not supposed to be sheep. We're not supposed to conform and only have one thing, one creation, one that has been a word that has been misused and usurped, and we're taking that back. Oneness in diversity, recognizing that we are plugged into more than what we've been told. It's that simple. Okay, I mean, from a higher perspective. So all of these symptoms that we feel, everybody's at a different level. If you've just found this video and you aren't used to this, welcome. It's just expansion. You might have physical pains, discomforts, sleepless nights, especially the last few nights. You might have weird, crazy dreams. You might be seeing sparkles or spheres. You might be seeing spaceships in the sky. You might be hearing your guides talking with you. You might be having dreams that come true. You might be having some weird synchronicity things where you say the color blue, you go outside and everything around you is blue. Obviously, I love blue, but your DNA is waking up. You're remembering. Welcome to the Ascension Club, right? We're all in that. It's happening, okay? So that's the validation that I wanted to offer. We are not crazy. What is crazy? What are we comparing it to? Who told us that this is normal, this is how we're supposed to behave, and if you step out of that box, then you're dubbed as crazy? Who? And that's what we're starting to ask ourselves. Why? Who? When? What? And this is part of the waking up process. We become curious. We want to know more. But I'm being guided to remind everybody that as we wake up and as we look at reasons why and who's in control and what's controlling from a 3D perspective, recognize that that's a third dimensional energy that is no longer supported, and it's merely a projection, an echo of something that has already occurred that we are seeing in the past now falling apart. And I know that that's a very multi-dimensional way of looking at things from timelines, but that's how it works. Everything is happening now. But we are having this experience on Earth to kind of allow us to slow down and experience things in a linear fashion. So we are seeing things that are being presented to us through what? A television. So that means that these things that are being presented to us that seem like they're coming from real time aren't. It's already happened. And this television that's being presented to us is a presentation. Just like when you watch a play, there's actors, there's actresses, and so we're starting to feel when we watch something if it's true or if it isn't, because our DNA is waking up. We're remembering, oh, guess what? That's not junk DNA. That actually does something. Oh, telepathy? Oh, clairaudience? Oh. So it's okay if we're experiencing all of these things. So it's this convergence, and it's happening, and sometimes it can feel really overwhelming. So if we're feeling really overwhelmed, start doing due diligence and looking up what you're feeling. Some of the key words are ascension symptoms, fifth dimension, right? Or 5D, looking up, what else? All of that. 3D, 4D, 5D, parallel universes. Play with it. See what you find. See how it makes you feel. That can sometimes provide validation that you're not going crazy. However, I'm also being invited to share that we are also being invited, invitation, open invitation. Be open. Trust that things are unfolding and happening on a multidimensional level, trust that we have put things into place through our consciousness and our heart-centered desire for peace, joy, and compassion. And the things that are being flushed out that's exactly what's happening. Because the more that gets exposed, I'm going 4D, 3D for a moment here, the uglier that it is, we are being invited to feel the emotions of fear, of anger, of frustration. Integrate those emotions, come back to who we are, which is we are here to create higher energies of love. We cannot stay in a space of constant anger, fear, and hate, because then it just perpetuates it. There are going to be a lot of people that need our help to stabilize their emotions and to assist in giving them compassion, because they are having a difficult time processing all of this. But be aware that the uglier it gets, that's no longer hidden from us. It can't hide. So if it can't hide and it's the ugliest that we've ever seen, that is a cause for celebration that we're seeing it, because it's been going on for a long time and we haven't necessarily seen it. And I'm going to go 3D here for a moment. Some of us have known for years that these things have been going on, but they haven't been able to be flushed out, okay? And that can create feelings of anger, fear, frustration, and all of it. Some of us are appalled at the things that are being exposed, thinking, how could I not have known? Be gentle with ourselves. Recognize that we're human beings. And a lot of the things that we've been feeding into and that we've been fed were meant to keep us in the dark. However, we're being just recognized that that's not where we are anymore. So if we're seeing all of this stuff being flushed to the top and it's disgusting, we see it and we're not ignoring it. We are aware of it, and it would not be able to be flushed to the surface if it were able to stay in hiding. That in itself is a blessing, if that makes sense. So much more than that. So as this stuff is flushed up and exposed, it allows us to integrate faster than if it wasn't being exposed. We may not ever have been able to integrate those feelings and emotions, which then does not make us stronger. Knowledge is power. We are starting to know and understand what's been going on behind the scenes of the 3D, 4D reality matrix. And because that stuff is being flushed up, it's allowing for a mass consciousness awakening faster than we could have even thought was possible based on the old platforms. In addition to that, we've got, as this happens, the connection with Earth. She's helping us. And all of our ancestors and future and past, in and through our DNA, RNA, all of that. The sun, the planets, the alignments, the eclipses, everything is lining up in a way right now that allows things to click into place. And as we click, it can be uncomfortable. We reach a certain access, right? An access point. And as we do that, we access more, but it's almost a crossroads that we have to sometimes stop and digest. And then we expand. And then we come to another crossroads, we stop, we digest, and we expand. So we step forward, we step into this new framework. So a recap. We are embodying our multidimensional aspects in this lifetime now. As we come into a fuller embodiment of who we really are, and we remember, we recognize, and we connect back in with Earth, which was what was always meant for us, we don't just get back on track, we create a new track, which has already been done. The tracks are here, they're set, they're laid out, and they're not rigid. We're flowing into them. The more we can allow ourselves to flow with ease, to let go of the need to control how things are going to be expressed or how things will be exposed, and the more we come back to our own self-control, which is integration. Allow the feelings to come up. Express from gratitude rather than our efforts are futile. I hear futility is the word that comes through. Our efforts are futile. Things are falling apart. Look at this, look at that. Take a step back. That's your belief structure. That's your belief system. And part of the reason that this is happening for those particular people, and I'm not saying you, I'm using that as an example. I feel like many of us have already been there, done that, right? Oh my goodness, the end of the world. It is the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it, right? It is a whole new world. Therefore, nothing is as it was or as it would have been had we not have come into this space of anchoring these higher frequencies. However, the more we anchor these frequencies and the more we stay in that space and I'm being guided to talk about the word acceptance, because that's another word that's been usurped or misinterpreted. Just because we come into a place of acceptance doesn't mean we accept what other people are telling us. We are accepting what is from a higher frequency of what is, the isness of the I am. I am. And if somebody is telling us to accept what we are not, that is the acceptance that we don't want. Does that make sense? So someone says, well, you need to accept this because this is how it is. Is it? Is it really how it is? You're telling me I need to accept this because that is the way it is from your matrix, from that belief structure, or from that 3D reality construct that has no power over me because I am all that I am, and I am not in alignment with that. That does not exist for me, and I choose sovereignty. Right? I had a dream the other night and Rush was playing in the background and it was, I will choose free will. I mean, my whole dream, that was my background music. So it is about that. Acceptance isn't about that whole, acceptance is about accepting that I am all that I am. I am that I am. I am connected to source. I am creating from this. What is this? Another song, what is this? Epic, right? Going old school here.